All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are live, and I want to thank you all again for tuning in today. This is the fourth lesson in our, let's say, coronavirus home boot camp. All right, so I'm just doing some simple science lessons. Target group ages like 5 to 11 ish, and hopefully we're learning things this week. Today's lesson will be relatively short in comparison to, I think, the first couple videos, but we're talking about diffusion. And this is part one. We'll also do diffusion again tomorrow. We'll talk about a separate angle of the concept. But this is what you'll need, and I hope everyone can see that. Today, what you'll need food coloring. You just need one color, but food coloring. You need two transparent cups or glasses. Try to use some that are the same shape and size. Also, you need hot water and you'll need cold water. Okay? So, again, you'll need food coloring, two transparent glasses or cups. You'll need hot water and you'll need cold water. I'm just going to leave this up for like another minute and a half before we get started so everyone can see what they need and can go get it. And then we'll get started in about a minute and a half. All right, I see the Walters kids are on, and I see the Coleys are on, and I see the Stargels are on. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. And again, I hope this lesson goes well, and that you gain something from it today. Also, I did want to say I have received a number of pictures of people with their children doing the experiments later on, or I guess while we were running them. And thank you for sending those on. If you want to send them out so I can see them easier, I want to start a hashtag. So just hashtag science made simple, and I'll be able to see them all there. And I would love it. I would absolutely love it. I don't always know how well these things go from your side of the camera versus mine. And so it really is encouraging to see that people are actually taking what we learn through these lessons and applying them and trying it out later on. So if you could just hashtag your pictures of you and your kids doing these experiments, hashtag it science made simple, and it'll be easier for me to look them up and to find it that way. So I'd appreciate that. But again, thank you all for joining us for these lessons. Today, we're talking about diffusion. This is part one of a two-part discussion on diffusion. Again, you'll need some food coloring. You'll need two transparent cups or glasses. You'll need some hot water and you'll need some cold water. Okay, every day, I want to emphasize the most important thing that a scientist has to pay attention to when they're doing a research experiment. The most important thing, do you remember what it is? All right, it is safety. Safety is the most important thing to pay attention to. So for today's lesson, there is one thing that we should pay attention to, and that is the fact we are using hot water. Okay, I actually will be using boiling hot water because I think it'll make the demonstration more apparent. Okay, if you're using very hot water for the children, make sure that an adult handles the very hot water. Okay, that is the safety concern for today. Now, we are just using water, so I'm not wearing my goggles because if it splashes into my eyes, it won't harm me. Okay, and I don't have gloves on either. I have the food coloring. I will tell you, the food coloring, once it gets on your fingers, it will dye your hands for several hand washings. But I don't need the glove today, and obviously I don't need a lab coat either. So Safety is the most important thing. That was our safety discussion for today. But what was the other thing that we're supposed to bring along when we do an experiment? Anytime we do an experiment, we want to pay attention to safety, and then we want to do something else. Do you remember what that is? All right. We want to bring our notebook. Do you have your notebook? Are you taking notes? Very important for you to take notes. If you don't take the notes and you have an observation, you might forget it later on, or there may be a very important detail that you're not writing down that you forget about later on, or you don't quite remember it as it happened. Okay, so you want to bring your notebook along and you want to take notes. Remember, what are we writing in our notebook? Well, some of the things that we're writing in our notebook are the question for the day. And today's question is, will food coloring spread out faster in hot water or cold water? So that's the question for the day. Will food coloring spread out faster in hot water or cold water? Okay, so that's the question. The concept for today that we're focusing on is diffusion. And what is diffusion? What is diffusion? All right, so I've written down a couple definitions of diffusion. The first definition is that diffusion is a mixing of substances by the natural movement of their particles. I'll repeat that. Diffusion is the mixing of substances by the natural movement of their particles. Okay? More relevant for today is the second definition. Diffusion is the movement of a fluid from an area of high concentration into an area of low concentration. I'll repeat that definition too. Diffusion is the movement of a fluid from an area of high concentration into an area of low concentration. All right, so I've drawn something here that I want you to see. Okay, and I hope both people on Facebook and on Instagram can see it. There may be some glare here. So I'll explain what is present. I'll try to bring this a little bit closer for the folks on Facebook. All right, you'll notice here I have a lot of dots, and I have this as my area of high concentration. So there are a lot of purple dots here. Okay, this is my area of high concentration. You can think of this as your food coloring. Food coloring is highly concentrated. So when you put it in water, it only takes a few drops to turn that water from transparent to the color of the food coloring. Why? Because the food coloring is an area of high concentration. The water, an area of low concentration. So food coloring, at least the food coloring I'm using, is water-based. That means it already is in water. It has water. So I'm adding water to water when I take food coloring and adding it to water, okay? But it's so concentrated in the food coloring that the food coloring is not transparent. It is, for example, red or blue or green or yellow. But once I put it in this area of low concentration, that really highly concentrated food coloring disperses or diffuses into this area of low concentration and such that it's more spread out. Okay, so that is the concept of what we're talking about today in terms of diffusion. Here's the question again. Will food coloring spread out more in hot water or cold water? All right. Now, what is your hypothesis? Your hypothesis could be, yes, the food coloring will spread out faster in hot water. Okay? Or your hypothesis could be, yes, or let me put it this way. I'll ask the question just about the hot water. The food coloring will spread out faster in hot water. That's one hypothesis. Another hypothesis might be the food coloring will spread out faster in cold water. Another hypothesis might be the food coloring will spread out equally as fast in hot or cold water. Another hypothesis might be the food coloring does not spread out at all in either the hot or the cold water. Those are just some examples of ideas that you can test. Okay, we remember that a hypothesis is an idea that you can test. All right. For the younger children who might find it easier to remember this way, a hypothesis is a guess you can test. It rhymes, so it makes it easier. A hypothesis is a guess you can test. All right. So, what is your hypothesis? Make sure to write that down. Again, the question is, will the food coloring spread out faster or diffuse faster in hot water or cold water? All right. My Instagram camera is kind of shaky here, so I'm going to set that up again, and then we'll go ahead and give this a shot. I do want to just tell you that the procedure requires you to put food coloring in the hot water and the cold water, but you want to do it at about the same time. Okay. Also, I've seen this demonstration done before using different colors of food coloring. And from my perspective as a researcher, that adds an error, a level of potential error, because I don't know if what's in a blue dye is similar or the same as what's in a red dye. And so they may behave differently. So instead of using two different colors, I'm using the same color. Okay. So I'm only going to use a red food coloring dye today for this demonstration because I want to limit the number of variables that I'm working with. And by using more than one color, that is adding another variable that I don't need to add. Okay. All right. So let me set this camera up and then we can go ahead and start the demonstration. All right. So I have here my first glass and then I have my second glass. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get my cold water and I'm going to put it on my right. All right. It probably appears on your left. It's on my right. That's where my cold water will be. And then I'm going to get my hot water and I'm going to put it in the jar, in the container on my left. I am actually going to, again, I want to limit the number of variables that we're working with. So I'm actually going to use a measuring cup. I'm going to pour about 1 cup of cold water here and 1 cup of hot water. You can eyeball it. It really, you can eyeball the level of water in your cup if you don't have a measuring cup. But just to limit the number of variables in my experiment, I'm going to use the same amount of liquid in each container. All right. So I'm going to go get my cold water. All right. And I'm going to pour my cold water in this first container. Okay. Now I'm going to get my hot water. I will tell you, I actually boiled my water, so it is extremely hot. And because I just think the contrast will give us a better result. So I'm going to go get the hot water. I'm using a funnel because I don't want to burn myself. I don't want it to spill everywhere. And it's already spilling everywhere, of course. Sometimes you make a mistake when you're doing an experiment. All right. So, and I hope everyone can see this pretty well. Again, I have the hot water on my left and the cold water on my right. All right, you can see the steam coming up around the top of this hot water here. And I think out of all the colors, I've tried this with a few colors. I think red works the best. So if you have red food coloring, I think that works the best. I've had the poorest results using green. So red has worked the best for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly drop 3 drops of red food coloring into the cold water. I'll start with cold water first. 3 drops right down the center of it. And then quickly 3 drops in the hot water. Again, right. Oh my goodness, I messed up. Sorry. And this is what happens when you go live. So there you go. The demonstration is still true though, right? So we see this is the hot water and this is the cold water. And which one is actually diffusing the food coloring the fastest? Again, hot water, cold water. All right. So if you're trying this at home, and again, I apologize. Of course, I go live and I make a mistake, but you'll notice that the hot water, the food coloring has spread all the way through the water already, whereas the cold water is still diffusing. You'll notice that you can still see areas of transparency where the red has not yet diffused into the rest of the water in the container with the cold water. Okay? So, what was your hypothesis? Was your hypothesis correct? Did you think that the food coloring would disperse faster, diffuse faster in the hot water or the cold water? All right, we have discovered through experimentation that it actually spreads out faster in hot water than in cold water. And in fact, you can still see that in this glass here, the cold water, it still hasn't fully spread out. You can see that there is still areas of transparency in the cold water, whereas in the hot water, it is red throughout. The red color has spread throughout. Okay, so we have diffusion happening faster in the hot water than in the cold water. Why is that happening? Well, you'll have to tune in tomorrow for the answer as to why, but do think about it. This is a 2-part discussion on diffusion, and we know now that food coloring spreads out faster or diffuses faster in the hot water than in the cold water. Why is that happening? Think about that question, and tomorrow when we do our experiment, it'll become a lot more apparent, and we're going to do something pretty cool. Okay? So write down what your results were. Write your observations as to what happened today. Okay? Now, tomorrow, I want to tell you what you'll need. Tomorrow, we're going to again look at diffusion. You will again need hot water. You will need cold water. But tomorrow, you will want to have 2 different colors of dyes for the experiment. Okay? I'm going to use yellow and blue. Yellow and blue. Those are the 2 colors that I'll be using tomorrow. At least I expect to use those 2 colors. And if I still have enough blue dye, I have enough yellow. So that's what I'll be using. You will also need tomorrow a note card or a card stock, or even if you have like a very a thin but smooth piece of plastic, you'll need that. And then you'll need 2 containers. I'm actually going to use shot glasses. Okay, I purchased shot glasses just to do this experiment because I actually I don't drink, so I don't have shot glasses at home. But I went out to go buy these just to do this demonstration that we'll be doing tomorrow. So you'll need shot glasses. You don't need shot glasses, but you need something that's transparent, like these glasses that I have here. You can use these, but you'll need a note card big enough to cover the whole mouth of the container. And we're going to take hot water and cold water, and we're going to put them on top of each other, and we're going to see what happens to the colors of the dyes in there. And that will answer the question why it is that the hot water, the food coloring dispersed or diffused faster into it. And that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. All right. Again, if you do this experiment again later on today, or if you have pictures of you all doing it today, you can post them to Instagram, post them to Facebook, and hashtag it Science Made Simple. That way I can actually go there and check out all the pictures and even comment on them. And thank you all for doing this with me. And so I hope you learned something today. And I will see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. All right. Have a wonderful day.